Amsterdam to New York. By 1664, the English colonies were really starting to come together. All of the New England colonies had been founded, and with the exception of Slowpoke, Georgia, the southern colonies were in full effect. But there was a gap that prevented the English from attaining a coastal tic-tac-toe, and that gap was a Dutch colony called New Netherland and its capital, New Amsterdam, located in current-day New York City. But before any of this, today's Manhattan was an island called Mannahatta, which for the Lenape, its original inhabitants, meant hilly island. The Lenape made dome-shaped houses using bark from the thousands of trees on the island. They hunted deer and fished oysters out of the East River. Side note, I wouldn't go in the East River even if I were on fire. But things would start to change in 1609. Henry Hudson, representing the Dutch, sailed up the river that would bear his name looking for the Northwest Passage. Eventually he realized, whoa, this river certainly goes north, but there ain't nothing west about it, and returned to Holland, but not before noticing the potential gold mine of beaver pelts and claiming dibs on what would become the Dutch colony of New Netherland. Cut to 1624 when the first settlers from the Dutch West India Company arrived on Northern Island, today Governor's Island. It's a good thing they finally got here too, because just 4 years earlier, settlers from a rival nation had intended to arrive in the same area, but ended up a few hundred miles northeast. You might have heard of them, the Pilgrims! Anyway, the next year they decided to move to the next island over, and the settlement of New Amsterdam was founded. But the Dutch wouldn't be alone on the island, which leads us to the myth of the beads. As the story goes, Dutch leader Peter Minuet negotiated the purchase of Manhattan for $24 worth of beads. First, it wasn't beads. Well, it could have been, but it could have been anything. We don't know, but what we do know is that it was the equivalent of 60 Dutch guilders, and 60 guilders today is more like $1,000 than 24. Still not great, but better. Then there's the idea that it was sold. It's a misconception that Native Americans believed no man can own the land. But it's not clear whether the Dutch bought the land or just bought the right to share the land. Too bad the Lenape didn't know that European settlers weren't much for sharing. Lastly, there's the theory that it wasn't even the Lenape that made the agreement, but some other tribe on its way to Long Island. Thus, the tradition of taking advantage of immigrants fresh off the boat begins. Anywho, while the colony never really thrived, it did survive. Mills were built to take advantage of creeks and rivers, and because, well, these are the Dutch. New Amsterdam, while originally a company settlement that was religiously and politically intolerant, became a little religiously and politically tolerant, which was like super progressive for the time. Throughout the New Netherland colony, patroonships or large tracts of land were given to those who could bring 50 colonists over and promptly exploit them. One patroon, Jonas Bronk, controlled much of what came to be known as the Bronx, currently owned by the Yankees. Who am I kidding? Yanks own all of New York. Yankees rule.
Yankees win!
Relations with the Lenape and other neighboring tribes were strained, especially when New Amsterdam was led by a colonial director, Wilhelm Kief, just a real jerk of a guy. Things got so bad that settlers had to build a wall to protect themselves from natives, which eventually became the street known as Fifth Avenue. No, I'm kidding. Today it's Wall Street. Context clues. So horrible William Kief was fired and replaced by Peter Stuyvesant. Come on, man. Look at that guy. Dude has a peg leg, and he didn't lose it to some weird 17th century disease. He lost it to a cannonball. He's a cannonballer! Stuyvesant was also determined to bring some order to the colony. For the most part, he made peace with local tribes, helped by the fact that they were busy fighting each other over furs. He regulated saloons, cracked down on smugglers, and pretty much tried to outlaw Lutherans, Jews, and Quakers. Who would have known that a wooden cyborg would be so cold? So it should be no surprise that when 4 English frigates with 450 soldiers arrived in New Amsterdam Harbor in August 1664, no one wanted to fight for Stuyvesant. By this point, only half of the residents of the diverse settlement were even Dutch. They pretty much said, if you want to fight the English, throw your leg at them. I'm headed to the pub. New Amsterdam, and in effect New Netherland, was surrendered without a shot, and later renamed New York, after the Duke of York, who was given the land by his brother, King Charles II. Must be nice. Last Christmas, I think my brother got me a Target gift card. Let me know in the comments, what's the best or worst present your sibling ever got you? If you want to learn more, check out The Island at the Center of the World by Russell Shorto, link below. Like, share, sub, support on Patreon, if able, like the awesome Dr. Max and Kelly Thompson. Check out the recommended videos. Be safe, and I'll see you next time.